Today we are having a look at making our own creations and inventions as we look at the kids' TV show called Whizz Whizz Bang Bang. It only lasted 1 season and 15 episodes in 2007. The idea of the show was to make kids strange inventions. It was hosted by Greg Foot. So let's take a look at a few episodes. So we got this rocket bed episode. So we meet the kid as they tell us Fraser hates maths homework and likes kung fu. He arrives at the workshop as Greg tells him they can build anything as Fraser announces he wants to do a rocket-powered desk as Greg says why don't they go further and do the whole bed. Greg says they need to find Ralph as he will help. They show off the design that they sent in for the show as they then find Ralph. Greg asks for his lunchbox as Greg then shows us an experiment as he is explaining Newton's third law. We watch Greg as he is doing the experiment, trying to show how the car will move when it is shaken. We then head outside as Greg shows us some rockets and how they aren't always the answer. Greg then explains how the rockets work. Some guy shows us how long the rockets last for as they time it only for a second. Greg then explains it is quite hard to control once they go off. They show off another rocket as it goes off for a bit longer. We see another type of rocket as Greg says we need to lighten the load on the bunk bed. Fraser says it needs some wheels as they call in Ralph as Greg says it is still going to be heavy with all the wheels and rockets on it. We then get a bit of bonker science as Ben wants a lightsaber, so Greg shows us how to make one with a strip light. So we head back to Fraser as we get a recap of what has happened so far. We arrive in Amsterdam as we arrive at something with the European Space Agency. Fraser gets on some wheelchair as he gets spun around in circles. Greg then shows us a water rocket as Fraser pumps it to launch it. We then talk to the professional as they say there is a problem with putting rockets on his bed. The professionals say they have big rockets as Fraser asks a ton of questions. They go to see one of the big rockets as Fraser realizes it won't fit on his bed. Greg says it will be too heavy. They rule out rocket engines as they think about jet engines. Greg shows us a massive jet engine as he explains the science behind it. Fraser says it is too big as Greg shows him a smaller one. Ralph shows us the model he has made for the bed. Ralph does some wielding as Greg does some more bonkers science. Susie wants to know how to power a rocket as Greg shows us how rocket fuel burns. So time for the big build as they get to it. The whole team is on board as they complete it. So let's test it with the stick. Fraser gives out the instructions on how to use the thing as he then gives it a drive. We watch him go so fast as the episode wraps up. Next up we got this cluster balloon. So we meet Rhonda, we find out she hates the color pink but loves the trombone. Rhonda arrives at the workshop as she then explains what she wants to build. She explains it is a flying machine with a big-ass balloon and skis. Greg questions why she wants one as she explains she wants to go to school in it. Greg says he can do it as he calls Ralph for some help. He gives some balloons to show how a flying machine could work. They try to get it level as the propeller causes a problem. So Greg takes Rhonda to Austria as we find out about hot air balloons. We see how hot air balloons work as they are huge inside. Greg explains how they work with hot and cold gas. Greg explains more about the balloon as they head on board one. Rhonda is scared of flying, which is confusing for what she wants to build. So she tries to go up a little bit and it's fine. So we then get some bonkers science as someone wants to know how balloons fly, so Greg explains there are 2 types of gases that are used. He blows them up to show why hydrogen isn't used in your balloon. So back to Rhonda in Edinburgh at some climbing arena, we meet some guy who asks how heavy Rhonda is, so they can calculate how many balloons they need to lift her. We start blowing up the balloons as we make over 60. We blow and blow till the cows come home as one explodes and others have already flown away. They try to get them back as some guy climbs for them. He rescues them as Greg then wants to show Rhonda how to fly, so they head to a simulator as Rhonda tries to be a pilot in a plane as she gives it a go. She explains you have to focus a lot. They try to land the plane as Greg explains all about the lights. She crashes the plane as we then get some more bonker science as someone wants to know a cool way to blow up a balloon. So Greg uses some nitrous oxide to blow up the balloon. So back with Rhonda we have a ton of balloons as we then strap Rhonda to all the balloons. Greg comes in with some robot car as he explains Rhonda will be using it for steering. So it's time for everything to come together as they strap balloons to Rhonda as Greg explains how everything will work. She floats off so fast they need to burst some of the balloons. They try to find an equal balance as she floats off again. Greg explains everything that has happened so far as the challenge then begins. Rhonda starts driving around the course as she floats around trying to burst the balloons. She completes the challenge as the episode ends. Finally we have an underwater canoe. We meet Jordan as we find out he hates cleaning but loves the sea. So Jordan enters the workshop as Greg asks what his invention is all about as Jordan explains it's some underwater ball thing. Greg explains that if he wants to be in a bubble underwater it is going to be very tough as Greg explains to think of something else. He shows off a submarine as Jordan says he wants something new. They try to get some ideas as he comes up with the idea of something that can dive and float at the same time. So they try a canoe as Jordan says to drill some holes in it. They make a huge hole as Jordan then asks how they are meant to float as Greg says some plugs will be good. He then pulls out a butterfly valve as he explains it. Greg shows off a demonstration as it doesn't work as Jordan adds something to make it steady. They make something as it works. They go off to tell Ralph they want a big one. So we head to go do some diving as we find out how to breathe underwater. Jordan asks why we can't use compressed air as Greg explains it is a bad idea. Greg explains something with a bottle as he puts it underwater. The guy explains how to work the air as they just mess around in the pool. Jordan says it is a good idea to just push a button to go from float to sink. Back in the warehouse they talk about big tanks with air. Ralph gives them some big tube as they get to building. It's time for some bonkers science now as someone hates red cabbage and wants to make it better. Greg talks about acid and alkalines as he puts the juice in the other beaker and it changes colors. He then puts some powder in there to change the color back. So back to the normal program as we then look at some sharks as Andrew talks about a robo shark. They watch how the shark works as Greg explains once more. He is smart that Greg. They talk about a big propeller as Ralph brings one in. They do some wielding as they continue to build the canoe. More bonkers science now as someone says money is burning a hole in their pocket as Greg shows off what happens when you dip it in water and when you dip it in lighter fluid. He then mixes them together and adds salt as he shows off and takes the money. They head to Pinewood Studios as they take a dip in a big pool. Jordan explains what everything does on the canoe as they start the experiment. The canoe starts to sink as it works and floats underwater. They do some dodgy green screen as the invention is a success. Overall Whizz Bang Bang was a good show about science and seeing the kids' inventions was very exciting to see and Greg Foot was very good and funny and he clearly knew his stuff about science. I'm unsure why it only lasted one season though because it was a good watch. So thank you for watching. If you have any TV shows you like to see me do, put them in the comments.